This portion here is a postscript note I added later after editing most of this video together. I just want to point out, once again, that dogs in the real world prove us right all the time. I don't know why so many daft dog defenders try so desperately to convince us that dogs aren't the very real problem they obviously are. But we would know better than them how awful these vermin are. Just the other day, I had an experience that I've had on several occasions within the last few years, and it's the sort of thing that has always happened to people in general, but which probably used to be less common in much of the US. I was walking across a parking lot, minding my own business and wearing headphones, when what do I hear and see? Some unsightly and sizable mutant vermin mutt, literally a mix of breeds I couldn't identify, and it wasn't even a pit mix at all, was barking loudly and menacingly at me, directing a lot of loud, abrasive, and uncalled for hostility towards me for no reason at all. It wasn't pulling on its leash to get to me as vigorously as even larger and more dangerous dogs have done in the past, but it was definitely threatening me and hyper-focusing on me, while the owner, some woman who had no business being around such a vile beast, pulled at it and baby-talked the grotesque gremlin to try and calm it down. I was nowhere near this abomination and was obviously walking calmly and quietly in another direction, the opposite of where the beast and its nutter owner were headed, almost like passing by, separated by several meters. A social cue a person would understand means there's no so-called threat or anything to attack. In other words, only dogs do this kind of shit, and maybe people on bath salts. Hello again.
This video will address two main points. 1. Why we hate dogs, as if it needed to be explained at this point. 2. Why dog nutters gravitate towards these foul beasts, you know the ones, in the first place. Or in other words,
dog nutter psychology.
Additionally, I may, or may not, address the whole service dog thing again, in a bit more detail. If this is not covered here, it will be dealt with in a future presentation.
Tail-wagging agents of chaos and death, yeah, all dogs suck!
Despite having explained this at great length before, believe it or not, I still get asked if I hate dogs, or why I hate them as much as I do. Honestly, it's difficult to believe there are so many people around that somehow need this explained to them, my previous videos notwithstanding. And it's hard to tell sometimes if people are feigning incredulity, in other words, playing dumb, or if they're just incredibly daft. It seems they either can't understand, or don't want to understand, something so obvious on its face that no one should ever have to launch into an in-depth explanation of it. This is probably the third time I've had to lay all of this out, so let's dive in.
If you're sick of dog culture, then you've come to the right place. Without further ado, I welcome you to this fight for change. Fight for change.
This old-time radio program was originally aired live.
I was not born hating dogs. No one I know of has ever started randomly hating something from one day to the next, for absolutely no reason. Truth be told, I was mostly apathetic towards dogs for most of my life, and although I could also be sympathetic to them, I did always find many things they naturally do to be very off-putting, to say the very least. For example, I saw my childhood dog, which by the way I did have for a brief time, eating its own dung. It was repulsive. Prior to that, I had no idea dogs did that. I never liked their barking at all, and always found it disgusting to be licked by a dog and never allowed or encouraged it. Maybe I actually was a dog hater. Of course, I prefer the term dog-averse. But the long and the short of it is this. Even though I'd had several horrible experiences with dogs, each of which should have made me hate all of them instantly, I didn't even become a so-called dog hater overnight. All told, it was a fairly gradual process, albeit it didn't take long at all, after experiencing many aggravating and threatening situations because of dogs in a relatively short span of time, for me to finally understand that this is just something our species is better off without. And of course, this is not my story alone.
Simone likes family, says she had a friend over on the night of the attack at the Lennox apartments when a pit bull attacked her, ripping off her arm.
Police are investigating this morning after an 8-year-old boy was attacked by the family dog and died.
It broke my heart to know that she had been mauled for 23 minutes.
Breaking now, a 9-month-old has been rushed to the hospital after reportedly being attacked by a family dog.
Literally watched the dogs drag the girl from one side of the street to the other.
Tonight, new video shows neighbors scrambling to help a woman who was viciously mauled by 2 dogs in Auburn.
Between my own experiences, those shared by many who post on my page, and accounts that make the rounds in these spaces, not to mention the stories that make the news all the time, there's no shortage of problems or bad news coming out of the dog world. Put very simply, horrible things happen all the time due to the presence of dogs. It's like we're in the Matrix. This is an epidemic in the United States of America and similar countries, but it's happening all across the world. It seems there's a breaking story every hour involving a person's death or serious hospitalization arising from a dog attack. To further complicate matters, dog attacks are on the rise and are generally underreported. The increase in dog attacks is a serious concern, but unfortunately the prevailing view among the general public is that a universal ban on all dogs, or at a minimum a complete removal of all dangerous and uncontrolled dogs, is not worth pursuing. To put this into perspective, what they're effectively saying is that they think the trade-off is acceptable. Some people own dogs, others lose their lives or their quality of life due to the presence of dogs. A commenter recently shared a personal account with me, an incident which took place in 2019, which involved the tragic death of their 88-year-old aunt, who was unfortunately mauled to death by 6 dogs, which belonged to a neighbor. This is the case of Bessie Jill Peterson, and there is a posting about it on dogsbite.org. Now, I could go on with examples, and I probably will, but this cannot be emphasized strongly enough. Dogs literally unalive people. They send them to an early grave, and death by dog mauling is one of the most unpleasant ways to go. It isn't instant, and the worst part about it is how totally preventable it is. Dogs kill people, and no one seems to care. Most just view it as an acceptable consequence of having them around us. When people do manage to survive their brutal attacks, they often end up permanently disfigured and mentally scarred for life. Societal attitudes towards dogs are insane at present. Imagine a consequence of someone's choice to own a vile beast they enjoy governing, or perhaps just having around, being that you die on your 32nd birthday. Imagine living to be close to 90 and getting taken out by a pack of violent hellhounds that shouldn't even exist, much less be present in human settlements. Imagine being a few days old, or less, and the reason you're taken out of this world is dog culture. Imagine barely surviving a savage pit bull attack, only to be further exposed to dogs because the so-called experts will say you need to be accustomed to the sight and sound of the very thing that seriously traumatized you, and which everything in your body is quite rightly screaming at you to avoid for the rest of your life. I did want to add a brief additional commentary about this specific case as well. This is one IHD covered a long time ago, and I believe it was the focus of an entire video. What I find troubling here is the choice of words in the title or headline, and we see this sort of thing a lot in the dog world. How does being attacked make a person brave? The fact that they're trying to shift the focus onto how, quote, brave a toddler or any person is after nearly being killed by some disgusting savage hellhounds, it says a lot. It tells you they're trying to shift the focus away from the horrific and undeniable real-world consequences of having dogs around, and particularly bully breed dogs, Rottweilers, Bulldogs, Dogo Argentinos, as well as Mastiffs and others. It should go without saying. Of course, everybody is happy that this poor child didn't have a worse outcome, and he will no doubt recover to an extent, because that is what the human body naturally does, as much as it possibly can. But to say that he is thriving after being permanently disfigured and doubtlessly traumatized for life is preposterous. No one who survives such an ordeal is going to be thriving. Their quality of life is significantly reduced, and they will now have additional challenges to overcome as a result. It's just an odd word to use to describe someone in that state, because of course, if we could be brutally honest about this, we might call into question whether the presence of beasts that can do this to people ought to be permitted going forward. I mean no disrespect to any victim of a dog attack when I say this, but seriously, who the hell wants to end up like Jacqueline Durand? Of course, in her case, she placed herself in extreme danger, but that is not always the case. But the thing we want to look at here is what dogs are doing to people, full stop. Going back to the question, what made me start hating dogs? Again, after experiencing many dog-related problems within a short span of time, whereas before I'd always known dogs could be garbage but mostly never encountered them, it wasn't long at all before I put two and two together. This is not some random, inexplicable vitriol towards another living creature. Speaking of which, we often get accused of hating all animals, simply for opposing the presence of dogs, but it should be noted that no other animal has such a negative societal impact as dogs, and that is what I am addressing. I also hate calling dogs animals, even though that's what they technically are. They're just so aberrant compared to literally any other living thing on the planet. I've done videos in the past going into detail on this, so I won't cover it further here. So again, I'm only talking about dogs, not animals in general, which I have nothing against. Most have instincts to keep their distance from people. I also think we should respect that. Dogs, by contrast, are notoriously invasive and intrusive. It bears repeating, videos like mine would not exist if dogs and dog culture weren't such a pervasive and all-corrupting social bane. Perhaps a couple of decades ago, this statement might have seemed a bit strange, which is not to suggest that dog culture wasn't a problem back then. After all, the 1978 book, The Dog Crisis, was written for a reason. But today, dogs are unavoidable, and dog culture is inescapable. There are many examples, and I will provide a few. Dogs increasingly smuggled into various public locations where they have no business being, and which were places where one would never expect to encounter one of these mongrels. Dognut ideologues spamming forums, social media, and the internet in general, with dog-related nonsense, even when it's completely unrelated, off-topic, and unsolicited. Hell, even one of Amazon's error pages forces you to look at dogs. And that's not nearly the end of it. People rapidly adopting the insane, cannibalistic philosophy that dogs are somehow better than people, that they are more valuable than our own species, even our own children. Dog attacks being a regular, and in fact daily, occurrence that's frequently downplayed and trivialized. Dog barking becoming ever more prevalent, even in nicer neighborhoods. Dog feces and urine everywhere. By the way, did you know that a significant percentage of bacteria in our water supply comes from dog excrement? And there's more. People who don't even own or want dogs lend support to this craze by pretending dog culture critics are the problem. Dogs being a defective selling item that results in more needless deaths and injuries to children and people in general than any other product on the market. Dogs pushed around in shopping carts as though they were children. Off-leash mutts inside convenience stores, dogs inside restaurants and grocery shops. These are all very serious public health violations, and no one bats an eye at this. It is shockingly common, although it shouldn't be too surprising, considering how dogs are pretty much taking over public spaces now. Of course, this is a very pressing concern, and it should be very alarming to at least most people. All this nonsense about service dogs is a major distraction. Even if it may not happen anytime soon, what we are working towards is the complete abolition of dog keeping as a hobby, which is mostly what it is.
This is a public health issue. Dogs do not belong on human settlements and are most out of place in towns, cities, and villages. But even in the countryside, they cause problems for those who live there. To those nutters who bring up 1,001 distractions about what people do, as if that in any way makes dog ownership okay, I have a counter. How does that, in any way, justify the presence of dogs in human communities? Defenders asked this same question, albeit rhetorically, almost verbatim, a long time ago. One particularly vulgar and persistent dog apologist recently tried to ask me why the presence of dogs requires justification. That is, of course, because they could not provide an answer to that question. So I say again, dog ownership is severely detrimental to human communities, local environments, and the planet as a whole. So it absolutely needs a justification if we are going to allow it to continue. Dogs are not only completely unnecessary, they also cause an innumerable amount of far-ranging social and environmental problems. If something causes that many problems, then there had better be a good reason to have it around. However, there is no good reason to have dogs around at all. I have long maintained that there is absolutely no need for anyone to own a dog or to be forced to come in contact with one.
And, for that matter, imagine thinking that a nasty mutt off the street, or straight out of the parking lot, frolicking in the produce is something to laugh or joke about. Imagine your immediate knee-jerk response to such a scene being to say that humans are somehow dirtier than dogs, which is of course generally untrue, although dog nutters are absolutely filthy, to be sure.
This is another craziness of dog culture. On that note, can you believe one nutter actually told me to shop online to avoid dogs in stores? How insulting is that? Pardon my French, but fucking seriously, stores and shops are for people, not dogs. If you want to be around a worthless barking mongrel, maybe go to a dog park. The gross and inconsiderate dog weirdos are the ones who should leave, or go elsewhere, or better yet ditch their disgusting habit, as they are the ones doing something wrong. The person who's shopping and not bringing a mutant inside with them is not endangering or inconveniencing anyone else. Only the inconsiderate sicko with a beast in tow is violating a health code, and what should be a most basic social expectation. We won't sacrifice our well-being for your feelings. Can you believe a nutter actually said this to me? You having a dog endangers others. It does not provide you safety. It only provides you some weird emotional fulfillment. Never do they acknowledge how unsanitary dogs are either. Now, a little more about just how dangerous dogs are. Dogs are used by the police and military precisely because they are dangerous. The military uses at least 2 different dog breeds as attack dogs, but consider also so-called guard dogs, and the simple fact that many dog owners claim they get dogs for protection purposes. If dogs were harmless to people, they would be incapable of protecting a home. What a dog can do to a potential intruder, it can also do to any other person. And let's be real here. Dogs don't know what trespassing is. They don't know if someone is an invited guest or a delivery person bringing a package to its owner. I'm so sick of hearing from these delusional nutters that dogs can somehow sense evil. As has been covered previously, dogs have an extensive history of usage in torture, war, conquest, colonization, oppression, and slavery. I won't go through it all here, although I have elaborated on it a bit in the past, and others have presented this in depth. But basically, dogs are clearly weapons, something I have said before and which I will say once more. If dogs were harmless, if they were actually the allies of humankind as many claim, it would be impossible to utilize them in this fashion. You could never turn a dog against any person. That fact alone is enough to discredit this ridiculous propaganda about them allegedly being man's best friend, as is often said. More like humanity's worst pest and fiend. Now, obviously, not all dogs are equally dangerous, at least not in terms of a direct physical attack, but this is only because some of them are quite small. As was referenced previously in a screenshot I used, a dog's size makes it no less aggressive or violent. But many breeds are clearly large and powerful enough to easily inflict serious bodily harm on even the largest adults. Many of the bully breeds can often be seen attempting to take down animals much larger than even the biggest person who has ever lived. Large dogs in particular can even hurt people without intending to, for instance, by knocking them over. What kind of world do you want to live in? What kind of world do you want for your children? The thing about dog owners, and all who perpetuate dog ownership, which includes the pet industry, is that they are actually shaping the world we all have to live in. Dog owners can't pretend they aren't guilty of any wrongdoing. After all, we must all live with the results of their choices and their actions. Dog ownership isn't some benign personal hobby where those who engage in it keep it to themselves. It's the opposite of that. They want to distract us with other crimes, but dogs make streets unsafe. I've done at least 2 compilations where the headline of a news story is literally something like, "Neighborhood terrorized by dogs." That is what dogs do. They terrorize. Because they are vicious and fearsome, and when they are able to roam freely, people are unsafe. Clearly here, I am mostly referring to the bully breeds and other comparable dogs such as Rottweilers and Mastiffs, as well as German Shepherds and others. No one is relaxed when one of these dogs is loose. The opposite is true. As for the tiny, worthless yappers, they are often the most aggressive. And while they are not super dangerous, at least to adults, they are still a total nuisance. And all dogs contribute in terms of the waste problem, which I have discussed in multiple previous videos at some length. Furthermore, the abrasive and uninviting cacophony of dog barking that permeates so many residential neighborhoods and apartment communities. This is another contribution of dog culture to the world. Seriously, if you're a bike rider or a jogger, if you walk to get places regularly, or are a delivery worker, then surely you know how much of a nuisance and menace dogs are.
We're hearing from more residents of Hollywood today about some dangerous dogs they say are terrorizing their neighborhood.
Also tonight, firefighters say dogs have been terrorizing a Buffalo neighborhood.
Good afternoon. People in one New Mexico town are fed up with a pack of dogs escaping from their yard and terrorizing their neighborhood.
Lovers in Douglas County say that they are being terrorized by a neighbor's dogs that keep escaping and then going on the attack. So far, Douglas County Animal Control has not been able to control them. Here's John Sherrick.
Terrorized in Tarzana, people say a pack of dogs has them living in fear.
New tonight, neighbors in Melbourne say a dog is terrifying them. They've called animal control and say those calls are going unanswered.
We begin tonight with a call to action from neighbors in the Del Mar area who say their pet cats are being viciously attacked by dogs who are running stray in the neighborhood.
Detroit residents say they're being terrorized by wild dogs and they want something done about it.
A neighborhood is demanding action after a series of deadly dog attacks that were caught on camera.
Residents tell us that roaming dogs are viciously attacking other animals, and they say the city, frankly, right now is just not doing enough to stop it from happening.
Happening now, a pack of dogs roaming the streets in the outskirts of Fresno is causing trouble and heartache for local families.
Kelso neighborhood living in fear tonight. Dangerous dogs at a home in the 800 block of Elm Street have mauled a woman and bitten several others.
A toddler is recovering tonight after being attacked by a pack of dogs.
Authorities in Whitley County say some of those animals are still on the loose.
Noon, investigators the neighbors in Willow Point subdivision on Cross Lake say they're scared to even leave their homes or let their kids outside to play because these 2 dogs bit an elderly man and badly injured him. Homeowners say these dogs killed a beloved pet, even ripping a pet from a neighbor's arms and killing it.
This woman was just minding her own business when a pack of wild dogs went on the attack.
It's vicious
animal. Dogs protecting the elderly female. The dogs are still loose.
Dogs on the loose. You see a man trying to fend off dogs with a stick here. Police in Egg Harbor Township responded to a report of 2 people suffering from multiple dog bites yesterday. And as officers and residents tried to contain those dogs, they bit 4 more people.
Neighbors say the dogs belong to someone staying in an RV.
They came around the corner and charged me.
You just stated it because
Now to a WPBF 25 News exclusive. A dog attacks one of our reporters. John Zanitas had just arrived back in a local neighborhood where a child was attacked by a separate dog this morning.
Действительно, в столичный регион пришла весна. Столбики термометров будут показывать на этой неделе до 8 плюс 9 градусов.
New at 6 tonight, we're hearing from people in Fort Smith upset after 3 dogs get out and attack other animals.
2 dogs, they were caught on camera terrorizing a neighborhood in Oviedo. So they even killed a cat in this situation. Animal Control now is looking into 4 different incidents believed to be connected to the dogs. So you can see the final moments of the cat's life here. We've blurred that out. Cleo was the Wiggins cat of 18 years and was blind and deaf. According to the Oviedo police report on the incident, the pit bulls jumped the fence, found the cat, and then killed her.
Dog that attacked a carriage horse in Union County was adopted from CMPD Animal Care and Control in 2019. The video of this attack at Cane Creek Park Easter weekend went viral. The carriage driver suffered serious injuries, as did the horse. The dog apparently broke loose from its leash and had to be put down.
As I posted recently, I really do appreciate everyone who regularly shares reports, news stories, and articles with me, whether in comments or via email. Unfortunately, there is so much of this all the time, coming from everywhere, that it seems impossible to get to all of it. That is how bad the dog problem is. The personal accounts in particular are immensely valuable. They let others know that they are not alone in their struggles. Just imagine having to live in a house with an awful yappy chihuahua or any comparable craphound that lunges and nips at your infant. Imagine being unable to escape that situation. Sadly, people don't have to imagine such scenarios as this one, or one that involves being unable to live in peace on your own property, or your own street or neighborhood or city because of dogs in general. And if there's one thing I really like seeing, it's when a subscriber or viewer puts one of these dog-worshipping psychopaths in their place. When they correct them, explain to them how atrocious and non-existent their thinking and logic is. And of course, we never hear from them again after that. Stuff like this is also always good to see as well. This was a good comment someone left on my video titled, "Dogs were never man's best friend." I won't read the whole thing out, but you can feel free to pause the video and read the text, if you wish. It makes many good points, especially as they relate to the way people are basically indoctrinated into dog worship from a young age. But basically it says that, should we ever successfully do away with dog ownership, we would need to start teaching children starting from a very young age that dogs are definitely not man's best friend, and that the term is just propaganda. We would teach them the scientific facts about the true nature of dogs, basically. Being active in these spaces, you really do get to hear or read a lot of accounts from people involving dogs that you may not otherwise come across. There are case reports and news stories, and there are incidents we hear about from people we personally know. But all of these individual accounts, especially when seen as part of a much larger picture, really do go to illustrate just how pervasive dogs are and how often their presence very much does have a detrimental impact on people's lives. This particular comment, which again you can pause to read if you wish, highlights the fact that many dog owners who happen to also be parents for some reason tend to often neglect their children, all while giving themselves over to the ridiculous dog owner lifestyle. They lavish the dog with praise and attention that really should be going to their children instead. It's sick and ridiculous. As I said in a post recently as well, there's a much bigger picture here. The dog lunatics aren't seeing it, obviously, but our case against dogs is rock solid. And in time, this will all make much more sense to many more people than it doesn't. At present, we're still in the minority, at least in terms of our perspective, but this should not deter us. It's overwhelmed me at times, I will admit. But remember, most people aren't dog owners, and that last bit bears emphasis. People who actually own dogs aren't even a majority of the population. Unfortunately, more and more people, for whatever inexplicable reason, are being suckered into this degenerate and backward lifestyle, if we want to call it that. Although, that is a lot of what it is, a lifestyle, among other things. And unfortunately, although most people don't own dogs, most people do also unfortunately seem to side with the cause of dogs in debates and discussions about their many evident drawbacks.
Welcome to the one space on the planet that's so clean dog nutters can't stand it. No!
Seriously though, societal attitudes towards dogs are insane at present. Oh wait, I already did that part, didn't I? But I mean, that really says it all now, doesn't it? After all, part of the reason dogs are so intolerable to me and to many people, besides how absolutely overrun the planet is with them at this point, has to do with the way many people seem to behave because of them, around them, and for whatever other bizarre reason.
And actually, I think that's a good stopping point there for now. But believe me, we're not nearly done. In the next upload, I will present the conclusion and elaborate on the second point about dog nutter psychology. Think of it as a part 2. After all, it was initially intended to be one long video.
You got chewed up shoes that's got toxic breath, tail wagging agents of chaos and death, yeah.